Hello, Manos. I'm very happy that you are with me tonight. I would like to speak with you about contemporary techniques for flute. My
Good evening.
first, my first question. Are contemporary flute techniques a way to express or shape compositional thought?
Oh, that's a very good question. I would say yes. In my personal compositional language, especially in works of the past, let's say the past 2 decades, flute extended techniques cover an important part of my timbral palette. In addition, various different timbres are often used as fundamental structural elements. More specifically, in my compositions, timbre and texture often replace the melodic material. Hence, a flute color is the main element to be explored during the process of my compositional development in various parts of my works.
Uh, which composers' work featuring contemporary flute techniques have made the greatest impression on you?
Yeah, that question sends me many years in the past, where I can recall George Crumb and especially his Vox Balene as one of my first works, which inspired my writing. But later on, as getting more familiar with the flute world, with the contemporary flute world, music of Salvatore Schiarino, Robert Dick, both his written compositions and his marvelous improvisations, and occasionally Brian Ferneyhough, had a significant impact on my compositional thought in terms of triggering my will of further exploration of the flute timbre.
Do you have bibliographies of contemporary flute techniques? If so, which ones?
Mhm. I think that I mostly use two books of the flute literature. I often use Robert Dick's The Other Flute and the present day's flutes by Pierre Ives Artaud, especially for multiphonics and some extraordinary glissandi or fingerings for timbral trills. But I could say that when I use all these techniques in my music, I often explore them myself as a flute player. So I have the chance and the fluency to explore the instrument myself beyond these two books and the written literature.
Okay, let's go to next question.
Mhm.
Do you create a legend in your works with full description of contemporary techniques?
Yes, of course I do, and I try to be very careful in creating notes, despite the fact that many extended techniques have a kind of common notation, like the key slaps or the Sharino breath tones, for example. I believe that clear descriptions and performance notes are appropriate in order to clarify the exact timbre a performer is asked to achieve by the composer.
Mhm.
I believe that every flute color used in a composition must be followed by very clear description of what the composer actually wants the performer to do.
Mhm. And the last question, which contemporary flute techniques do you like best?
Okay, if I had to choose just one, I think that I would choose the various forms of breath tones. This is because I very often mix them with the ordinary flute sound, either to create contrasting textures and dialogues between two different levels, called timbre levels, or in order to dematerialize the flute sound to more abstract sonorities, to dissolve a modern flute sound into just air and let it be lost in the air. On the other hand, I would not exclude the percussive timbres from my favorites. Sonorities such as the pizzicato or the tangram or the kick clicks are often used in my flute writing in order to generate some pointillistic sonorities or some rhythmical stuff, contrary to the ordinary flute sound, which might be occupied with melodic material, for example, or something like that.
Do you think that it's easier to write for you because you are also flutist?
Yes, that now you remind me a paper that I have presented in Lithuania years ago, and part of it was how to write for yourself. Of course, exploring an instrument that you have done some studies on it is way easier than exploring an instrument that you know it just theoretical. But I think that sometimes it's, let's say, a trap. A composer has to think of not let himself be how is it in English? Περιορισμένος, restricted in the knowledge that he has, and he has to find a balance between what I can play and what I want to achieve from my composition, and not let the composition be restricted to what I can play. So that this is a really big challenge in writing for an instrument that you already know, beyond the easy stuff that you know is very well, of course.
You teach composition, advanced theory, but also flute. Do you teach contemporary flute techniques?
Yes. Yes, on the one hand, I like them very much, so I want to transfer this knowledge to young people, because most of the times they have absolutely no idea of what can flute do other from the classical sound. And on the other hand, I will mention this book corresponding to the question, to your question of the flute literature. I love Peter Lucas Graf's Checkup book that I use it to my tuition, because he uses extended techniques like singing and playing, like whistle tones, like Flatterzunge, in order to improve parameters like the larynx, the throat position, or the quality of the sound. So, yes, when a student is mature enough to understand and can make these sonorities, I used both as exercises, and of course I try to introduce them in the repertoire. And it's the second or the third time, this year was the third time, that I compose music which includes extended techniques for the flute for students to play in their level. And the target is not to create the masterpiece of my life, but to create some pieces which would be very, very friendly to, let's say, an intermediate level student or in a low advanced level student, in order to take him from the hand and lead him or her to the contemporary repertoire of the instrument.
Mano, thank you very much for our short interview.
Thank you very much, Iwona. It was my pleasure to have a chat with you. Thank you so much.